Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to be talking about what I consider the #1 source of my musician's focal dystonia symptoms. And my hope is that if you're dealing with musician's focal dystonia yourself, you'll come away with a sense of how this issue may be affecting you and what steps you can take to solve it. My name is Nora Crone. I'm a professional violist based in New York City, and I'm happy to say that I have fully recovered from musician's focal dystonia. This video is part of an ongoing series where I share resources on injury recovery and prevention, specifically musician's focal dystonia. Now, before I get into what, based on my personal experience, was one of the primary drivers of my dystonic symptoms and tell you how I worked on it, I want to acknowledge that just as there isn't full agreement on the precise mechanisms that cause focal dystonia, there isn't complete consensus on what constitutes effective treatment. So some of you may have used or be using Botox, for example, or maybe a more psychologically oriented approach. And if that's working for you, then that's great. But in my case, and in the case of all of the musicians I know who have fully recovered, changing technique has been an essential factor in healing the brain. Dystonia is a very complex condition. And since the root causes of it still aren't fully understood by scientists, it's pretty overwhelming as a lay person to try to figure out what's going on or how to solve it. However, I can say that in my individual experience, one of the principal causes of my symptoms was structural instability. Let me explain what I mean by that. So when I first started working with Sophie Till, the violinist who helped me recover, I started comparing the differences between my left arm, the dystonic one, and my right. And what I noticed was that certain areas were lax and disconnected, like almost mushy. For example, the structure of the pinky side of my palm was so compromised by years of stretching that it just felt like goo compared to my other hand. Likewise, the muscles between my base knuckles were barely perceptible. It was almost like there was nothing bridging the gap between the two fingers. And finally, because of constant ulnar deviation, the connective tissue in the ulnar side of my wrist was so loose that I could actually move the bones around. The way I resolved this mushiness or laxity or whatever you want to call it was by learning an entirely different playing technique that didn't require compromising the structural integrity of those parts of my body in order to play. So, for example, rather than leaving my fingers down on the strings, I learned that the optimal use of the finger, hand, and forearm is as a unit, fully resting down in one spot at a time, which eliminates stretching. If you're a string player, some other time I'll explain how that works with double stops, but we'll save that for another video. Likewise, changing the overall orientation of my arm to the instrument also made it possible for me to reach any pitch without violating the integrity of the ulnar side of my wrist. And now the left side feels every bit as solid as the right, and my dystonic symptoms are gone. So how does this process work? Well, it goes without saying that if you want to eliminate structural instability, you need to start with a technique that makes it possible to use that part of your body in the way it was designed rather than constantly being pushed out of shape. And that almost always requires working with somebody who can help you identify exactly where you're going wrong. The second thing to know is that it does take time. Even if you grasp the new technique quickly at a cognitive level, it can take quite a while for new neural pathways to develop. And similarly, those tissues need time to regenerate. In my case, that was a multi-year process. But what I noticed was that the more solid I became in the new way of playing, the less structurally unstable those areas became and the fewer dystonic symptoms I experienced. If you want to know more about the specific technical approach I used to solve my musician's focal dystonia, you can check out Sophie Till's video, The 5 Main Causes of Pain and Injury, which I'll link to in the description. So if you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, please head over to my website, www.noracrone.com/thebalancepoint to sign up for my mailing list and make sure you don't miss any new content. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.